If you are trying to stay on top of debt, it's so easy to fall off track. And I know it because I've done it. Even recently, tackling my current debt, I have fallen off of track for a few weeks. And it's so interesting that this system that I've come up with called the Debt Accelerator Interactive Guide, which includes the payment tracker and it also includes the balanced milestone checklist, it is a system that doesn't include any math. It doesn't include any calculating interest. It is completely non-traditional, but it keeps you on track. The first thing that people tell you to do for most debt systems is a ton of math to decide what card to pay off first, figure out snowballing versus avalanching, figure out calculating your interest, and it's extremely overwhelming. But also, when you fall off track, because life is just life, and sometimes you have to focus on other things except for your debt, it's really hard to jump back in when you have times where you need to focus on other things. And so, what I was able to do with making these is a simple habit-based way to keep you moving forward, even if you have to pause for a month, even if you have to pause for 2 months. It is the most progressional system that I was able to come up with. And the most genius part is because it's built on habits, not formulas. It's built on something that doesn't have to do with redoing your calculations if you miss a month or miss a week of doing it. The reason why is it's like riding a bike. When you are on a bike after not riding it for a while, the momentum just comes back. You don't just lose the entire idea of riding a bike. You get back on it and your body snaps back into, hey, we already know how to do this. So as long as you're doing the 4 habits from the guide, if you haven't already grabbed it, the 4 habits that every person has and habits that they practice, if you get that guide, as long as you're following those 4 things and then you're not adding any new debt, you're always going to be making progress. Now, when you go in the bio and you get that guide for free, you also are going to get this interactive guide that you can fill in and do for yourself. As you see, I already have it filled in just for today to give some examples of how it can look. And so I want you to be able to see how it works in action. So the first thing is, let's go through how to use it. And again, it's called the Debt Accelerator Interactive Guide. It includes the payment tracker and it includes the balanced milestone checklist. So the first thing is that you're going to write the card name, essentially the card company, and then write your current balance at the top of each column. Now, the reason why we are not focused on math, however, we're still writing the card name and our current balance, is simply because we want to make sure that we're not just doing this work into the abyss. Okay? We want to make sure that when we are doing this tracker and the momentum in the milestone tracker, that we're actually moving towards something and we're not just throwing money into thin air, because it's very easy to stay off track already, but it's even easier to stay off track and harder to get back on track when you don't actually have a goal in mind. So as long as you understand that, hey, this is actually real debt that I'm really trying to get rid of, it helps us to stay grounded in the idea of paying off our debt. Now, the whole purpose of this is to build the habits of a person who is not in debt in the first place. So if we can actually get ourselves to do this as much as possible and stay as grounded as possible in this thing until we build the habit of it, then we're not going to need this tracker anymore. We're not going to need all these milestone things anymore. We're just going to be able to stay on top of our debt and get rid of it because we're now in the habit of a person who never had debt in the first place. That's where we're trying to get to. So the second thing, right, so that's the first thing. The second thing is that you want to make sure that you are paying everything incrementally. It doesn't have to actually be even, though. So what I'm saying is that this is totally not math-based. So you're not pulling out any calculator for any of the sorts of anything having to do with these tools that I'm giving you. Essentially, you want to be able to write whatever numbers feel good to you, and you're just going to write down incremental milestones towards zero. So this has to do with the balanced milestone checklist, where we're trying to take our current balance that we wrote, just arbitrary numbers, and we're trying to get them down to zero. Now, How do we get all these numbers in between? We just made them up. It doesn't matter. As long as it's between the balance and zero, then it doesn't matter. Okay? That's the whole point. Now, for the third thing, it's relating back to the payment tracker. Add tally marks to the boxes. That's all we're doing. The goal is to put us in the habit of being able to pay our debt every single day in daily interest. And if you don't understand daily versus monthly interest, it is fully explained in the guide. So make sure to check the guide once you get the instant download. And then that's all explained there. However, you're trying to get it to where you can do it for 21 days in a row or do it for 30 days in a row. $1, $5, $2. It doesn't matter how much you're paying per day, right? It matters about the habit. None of this has to do with numbers. None of it really has to do with the amount that you have. And it has absolutely nothing to do with the interest you have on each card. It more so has to do with the habits of a person who never got in debt in the first place. Now, the second part refers back to the milestone checklist, which is each box. You're going to check each box every time you hit a milestone. So I already have some examples here. These are our current balances, okay? Just some arbitrary balances that we wrote. And I'm actually going to put these up here because they belong here, but I'm going to leave them here for now. Okay, so what I have here is, as you can see, this box has a check mark. These ones have a check mark. A lot of these have a check mark. And then these have a check mark, okay? So essentially, you're going to fill in all these boxes with numbers. And then once you get to that goal, once your account goes from 2,000 to 1,800, you're going to place a check right here. Now, for the balances that are low, like here, 300 is our lowest balance. So obviously, this column is probably going to get paid off the easiest because the increments are way smaller than the ones that are thousands or hundreds of dollars apart. So when you start to see certain columns go really, really fast, it actually gives you motivation to try to pay off the other ones to keep up with it. And that is a really, really great way to get rid of your debt. Now, there are 10 boxes total, 9 only just with the numbers that we created. And then the 10th box is our final destination, which is a $0 balance, because that is our hope to pay off the cards completely. In addition to using the 4 habits that are inside of the guide to help us get there. Now, let's go ahead and add these back up here. I just copy and pasted. As you can see, they're the same now. Like this is the same as this because we want it to be the same. We're doing the trackers for the same cards. So the same credit cards that we have. So I was just putting those numbers back up there. But essentially, that's what you want to do. You want to check them off as you're beating those balances down to 0. And then the last thing, so that's the third thing, and the fourth way on how to use this is just seeing the balances go down motivates you to tackle the others. That's it. So if we want to even use an example, let's just delete some of these tallies here, delete some of them here, and delete this here, okay? If you go ahead and if you've paid 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 payments on this American Express card, but you have 0 payments on this Wells Fargo, WF, you have 0 tallies on this Wells Fargo card, you're probably not going to be worried about this American Express no more. You're going to go over here and start trying to get these tallies up because you're trying to catch up to your other tallies. So it's essentially a healthy game competing with your own debt to get the other debt gone. It's just an amazing way to stay on top of your debt. Now, the best way to use this is to stay consistent, obviously. But let's just say you do all of this work by January 1st. And then you don't touch this tracker again. You can print it out and you can also have it. You can print it out or you can have it digitally like I have digitally. But either way, you don't touch it until March 22nd, which is almost 3 months after you made this progress. Well, what happens is that you open back up your tracker and you can just immediately start going back to the other things, right? As long as you're following the 4 habits in the guide, these numbers are not going to change. So you don't have to go and recalculate anything, write anything. You don't have to redo any of these milestones. Whatever's manageable for you is going to stay manageable because you're not going to do anything that is going to hit your milestones off of track. So you can literally show up 3 months later, if life happens, that's just going to happen sometimes. Like, I was just genuinely busy with other things in my life. I was still paying off my debt. I was still doing the 4 habits in the guide, but I just didn't have time. So what I did is I actually knocked off 3 different checks on my own personal milestone checklist that I didn't check for a month. Like, I didn't actually physically go in there and check them because I was busy doing other things, but I was still paying off my debt. So that's the whole point, is when you're in the habit of being a person without debt, you're going to come back. Even if you take a break, from doing, the tracker, you're going to come back and you'll be like, dang, I checked off all these. This card don't even exist no more. Right? And then once you get down to that 0 balance, that's when you get that celebration. Okay? So essentially, when your card gets down to whatever balance, that's when you're going to check it. So let's just say for column number 2, right? We paid and checked off this 200. When our card gets down to $99, we have now surpassed this $100. Okay? Then when our account goes down to $79, we've now made our account less than $80. So I hope this is making sense, right? Whenever you've surpassed the number in the box is when you're going to check it off, because that means that you're no longer at that level. So the hope is that by the time you get down here, or by the time you get to those 9 things, you're at 0. Okay? If you start adding more debt or not following the habits that are inside of the guide, then it's going to be very difficult for you to be able to handle. But I'm telling you that you can disappear on this for weeks and come back. And then even with the milestone checklist, but also with the payment tracker, disappear for weeks and then come back and just be like, oh, I paid this and I paid that. And then even if you're feeling unmotivated, you can say, I have $3. It doesn't matter. Again, it doesn't matter. $2, $10, $1, it doesn't matter. Right? Come back and be like, okay, I got $3. I'm a pay this Chase card, this second Chase card, 3 days in a row. So you paid for 3 days and you add your 3 tally marks. And you're like, dang, okay, I'm gonna pay this Bank of America. I'm gonna pay this Wells Fargo. And then I'm gonna pay this Chase. And then, I'm gonna pay that Chase again. And then you just keep trying to get the tallies. And when the box gets to 30, which is essentially this, when it gets to 30, which is 6 times 5, 30, which is basically 30 days of that habit, then you're going to just erase it or remove it or restart it and then start that box again. But before you start the box again, you're going to redo the balance. So maybe at this point, the balance is $1,000 or something like that. And then if the balance is at 1,000, that means that we've probably not checked these boxes yet, but we have just checked this box because now we're surpassing $1,000 on that first card. So they're supposed to line up. Okay. So you're just going to keep paying on it. Even if it's $1, $5, $10, our goal is just to get in a habit of paying it more than 1 time a month, because we're literally letting our daily interest rack up and we're losing money. So the key here is habit over perfection. You do not need to keep doing this consistently. We're trying to get it to be such an easy thing to get back into that you don't even feel like you have to consistently do it. Because I personally neglected it for a month. But when I came back, all my tallies were still there. I didn't lose any progress. It was effortless to get back into the rhythm. And I literally saw all of my marks. And then it was even motivating because I had 3 check boxes that I had already overcome. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like I'm really moving through this. Like I'm like halfway through my 9 boxes, my 9 check boxes, because we have nine check boxes here before we get to 0. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like I motivated my own self just by coming back and looking at what I did, right? Because when you're living life, you forget what trackers you're using and what milestones you gotten to. But this is so different than traditional debt systems, and I really urge you to use this process if you're watching this video. So if you want to try it for yourself, the milestone tracker, that's included in here, and the payment tracker, that's included in this interactive guide, comes with the 4 habits that all debt-free people have that's in the bio. So all you need to do is get the instant download. You'll get all of it sent to your email, and then you can start using it. to track your debt, start seeing progress immediately. Even if you've been off track before, this is a whole different type of game. This is a whole different type of habit-based, non-confusing math method to get rid of your debt.